Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this council meeting of Tuesday, 17th of February 2026 at the Euroa Community Conference Centre.
Good afternoon.
I'm Councillor Scott Jeffrey, Mayor of Strathbogie Shire Council, and I'll be chairing today's meeting. Before we proceed, Councillor Clark Holloway will reinforce our councillor vision and values.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will be a councillor group that delivers valuable outcomes for our community through teamwork characterised by respectful debate, collaboration, and the commitment to being inclusive and transparent. Our councillor values are respect, integrity, accountability, transparency, and responsiveness.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Item 2, acknowledgement of traditional landowners. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the places we live, work and play. We recognise and respect the enduring relationship they have with their lands and waters. We pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. As per Strathbogie Shire Council governance rules and legislation in accordance with the Local Government Act 2020, notices relating to privacy, governance principles, voting and meeting procedures are given as read as printed in today's agenda. Moving to item 5, apologies and leaves of absence. Are there any apologies or leaves of absence for today's meeting?
One from the deputy.
We have Deputy Mayor Claire Hewitt-Kennedy, late apology for today's meeting. So item 6, disclosures, conflicts of interest. Councillors, I'll take all matters as being read. That being the case, are there any disclosures of conflicts of interest? Councillor Binks.
Thank you, February. Just noting for item 11.1.2, the report on the quarterly report on statutory planning. I'm related to one of the owners of the properties in this report, but as the report is simply noting applications received and determined, and council is not making a decision on the application or any applications for that matter, I'm comfortable staying in the meeting and participating, and I've sought advice from the Director of People and Governance in my considerations.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Any other conflicts of interest? You on to item 7, confirmation of meetings and decisions of previous meeting. Confirmation of the minutes and decisions of the council meeting held on the 9th of December 2025. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Binks.
Thank you. I would like to move a motion as is written on page 7 of it.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Stevens. Is there any opposition? Is there no opposition? Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? That being the case, I now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? The motion is carried. Into item 8, petitions, which there are none. Moving to item 9, Mayor and councillors. Item 9.1, Mayor's report, and this one tonight, you have to go with me, will take a while. When we were last in this chamber for our December council meeting, we were looking forward to Christmas celebrations, enjoying summer events and a short break to recharge ahead of what was shaping up to be a busy year. Pleasingly, we've made great progress towards recovering the budget, improving council process and governance, being relieved of our municipal monitor, and having a strong team of councillors and executive staff all working together towards a common goal. At that time, I'd not imagined my first address of 2026 would be about the worst bushfires to hit our shire since 1965. The Longwood Berries Lane bushfire has changed our landscape and had profound far-reaching and enduring impacts on the Strathbogie Shire, and particularly the residents of Ruffy, Longwood, Gurrum, Tarcombe and Crichtons Creek. Our hearts are broken for the loss of life, the loss of homes, properties and businesses, the loss of livestock and the broader impact on our communities and economy. I want to acknowledge all the emergency services personnel who responded to this disaster, particularly the CFA volunteers and frontline workers for their tireless efforts. Your courage, professionalism and compassion have made a profound difference to our community and will continue to do so. I also want to acknowledge the community-led relief operations, particularly in Ruffy, which has been a Herculean effort in responding to both human and animal needs, and also the communities of Crichtons Creek and Gurrum have established strong support and recovery plans for their areas. I'm so proud of the way our community has come together to support one another. At times in this role, it's easy to get consumed by the targeted negativity in social media and the efforts of the nighttime keyboard warriors. But it's been so heartwarming to see that only the best of the great Aussie spirit has risen to the top to protect and assist our most in need. The generosity has been overwhelming, and we thank you for the outpouring of love and support that has been felt right across our Shire. I want to specifically acknowledge the phenomenal contribution of our local member for Euroa, Annabelle Cleland. Despite losing much of her own farm and stock, Annabelle has been on the ground in every part of our affected electorate and beyond, advocating, organising, connecting people and resolving issues. We connected the best to initiate the Longwood Water Depot, for which we'll be very, very indebted to Neil and Kerry Tubman family, along with countless volunteers. She's also been instrumental in ensuring that constituents can access funding through the Strathbogie Disaster Relief Fund, organised by another group of dedicated and professional community members. Regardless of political affiliation, it's hard to fault Annabelle's remarkable humanistic response to this disaster, and I look forward to continuing our advocacy and support of our community together. I want to acknowledge the incredible work over the past few weeks of my fellow councillors who have been on the ground across our Shire helping our residents. Our councillors were there right from the start, assisting at the relief centres, organising help for affected residents, even moving hay and other goods to those in need. I'd like to thank Deputy Mayor Claire Hewitt-Kennedy, who unfortunately isn't here tonight, for stepping into the mayoral role while I fought the fires as a CFA volunteer and subsequently fire threatening our family homes and properties in the first few days of the disaster. As expected, she didn't miss a beat, but she did break my phone. Thank you to our CEO, Rochelle Quattrocchi, who, less than a year into the role, has shown absolute commitment to our organisation, people and community. We've shared unimaginable grief with residents directly affected by fire, watched with awe at the strength and resilience of our communities, and commenced the process to recovery. Michelle has also been instrumental in planning and articulating our requirements through effective advocacy, which I'll speak more about shortly, but also that I hope to be able to report on as success stories in the coming months. Many of our staff and their families were also directly affected by the fires, but the entire team has worked tirelessly to support our communities. This included filling emergency roles when the fire was still going, to now leading the recovery efforts. The entire council team has continued to deliver business as usual while responding to the fire emergency. And I want to commend each member of staff for their dedication that they've shown. The fire's impact extended into our neighbouring shires, and we've been working closely with Murrumbidgee, Mansfield and Mitchell shires as we start on the long road to recovery. It's been uplifting to see that our municipal borders have become temporarily erased, with the needs of our communities coming first and foremost. A special thanks must go to Mitchell Shire CEO, Mary Agostino, and Mayor John Dougal for hosting the Relief Centre in Seymour in the first few weeks of the disaster, and Mayor Shane Sarley from the City of Greater Shepparton for organising 3 semi-loads of human supplies from donations received from the good people of Shepparton. Other councils from across Victoria have mobilised staff with emergency response and recovery experience to assist us with our initial response and now the recovery process. Staff from Greater Shepparton, Campaspe, Mornington Peninsula, Monash, Manningham, Greater Dandenong and Bendigo, along with the Red Cross, Victorian Council of Churches government shared services and arborists have come together to form the secondary impact assessment teams that will be active in our devastated communities for some time to come, and we thank them for their support. There are so many other volunteers, both individual, charitable and business, that have contributed so much to the greater good in this response. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart for what you've given and continue to give. Council is committed to carrying on the great work our community started, supporting rebuilding and restoring what was lost, while strengthening our communities and laying the foundation for a more resilient future. In today's agenda, Council will introduce a condolence motion. With that motion, we recognise the resilience and strength shown by communities in the face of all we've lost and reaffirm a shared commitment to recovery and renewal. We took an important step on our recovery journey last week with the opening of our long-term recovery hub at 34 Railway Street, Euroa. The hub is a central, welcoming and trusted place designed to support our community through recovery, healing and rebuilding. It brings together key agencies, wellbeing services and recovery specialists in one accessible location. It's designed to make it easier for individuals, families, businesses and community groups to access practical support, clear information and guidance all in one place. The Recovery Hub has been made possible thanks in part to the $15 million in recovery support funding that's been pledged by the state and federal governments under disaster recovery funding arrangements. Council has been actively advocating across all levels of government since the fires to ensure our community has the resources and support it needs to move forward. The CEO, councillors and I have met with numerous federal and state ministers and parliamentary secretaries, including the Premier, Jacinta Allen, the Treasurer and Minister for Regional Development, Jacqueline Symes, the Minister for Emergency Services, Vicky Ward, who also attended and opened our hub, the Minister for Local Government, Nick Stakos, Minister for Planning, Sonia Kilkenny, the Minister for Agriculture, Ross Spence, the Federal Minister for Emergency Management, Christy McBain, the Member for Euroa, Annabelle Cleland, the Member for Indi, Helen Haynes, the Member for Nichols, Sam Beryl, Members for Northern Victoria, Ricky Lee Tyrrell, Gail Broad, Parliamentary Secretary for Emergency Services, Sheena Watt, and the Parliamentary Secretary for Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, Paul Edbrook. Minister for Mental Health, Ageing, Multicultural Affairs and Prevention of Family Violence, Ingrid Stitt. Shadow Treasurer and Leader of the Opposition, Jess Wilson. Shadow Minister for Women, Prevention of Family Violence, WorkSafe and TAC, Cindy McLeish. Emergency Management Commissioner, Tim Wybush. Another member for Northern Victoria, Wendy Lovell. I've also spoken at length with Her Excellency Sam Mostyn, the Governor-General of Australia, who showed great interest and empathy towards our situation. I've extended the offer for Her Excellency to visit our region soon. We're also presently working with Her Excellency Professor Margaret Gardner, Governor of Victoria, to organise a visit to the fire-affected region, such that there's a broad appreciation of the devastation and a multifaceted approach to government's response. These meetings and ongoing advocacy are critical to ensure that our politicians and decision makers understand the context that we're living. That being Strathbogie Shire operating in a financially constrained environment and suffering from at least 3 significant and consecutive natural disasters. It's absolutely essential and my strong position that we receive support and funding that adequately covers the costs incurred by council and thus our ratepayers and taxpayers in responding to these events. Thank all those I've met with for the support they've shown, and I look forward to working together in partnership through the recovery phase. With all that's been going on, business as usual has continued in other parts of the Shire. And I wanted to mention the wonderful Australia Day events that took place last month. Thank you to all the organising committee members and those who participated in bringing many Strathbogie Shire Australians together in celebration of what makes this place so great. I was proud to welcome some of our newest Australians at our citizenship ceremony, which was held on January 27th. At a time when we witnessed firsthand the very best of Australian courage, mateship and resilience, it was wonderful to reflect on what it means to be Australian as I received the pledges of our newest citizens. Their joy and delight were infectious, and we're very fortunate to have them as part of our community. Finally, I'd like to thank and make mention of the roughly 80% of our Shire community who is not directly impacted by this disaster, but have stood by us over the past 6 weeks since the fire started at Berries Lane in Longwood. Your generosity of spirit, human and animal needs, and for giving us the space to stabilise the community and organisation and implement our recovery process has been much appreciated. We anticipate more business as usual council updates from next week, with the recovery hub running in parallel. Thank you. Thank you. Comes back. Moving now to item 9.2, councillor reports. Are there any councillors who would like to report on their activity last month?
I don't want to go.
Councillor Holloway, would you like to kick off?
Not sure I have the words to do this report justice, but I'll do as best I can. I've put everything else to the side. We lost a big part of our Shire last month. We all use words and phrases like resilience, coming together, rebuilding, support, recovering, and such. Yes, these are important concepts, and yes, they're even true, but they come about from one word that is defined beginning of this year, which is loss. Loss everywhere. Wildlife, stock, farms, outbuildings, homes. And when we get to people's homes, we've also lost memories, keepsakes, histories, stories. A big part of our collective stories are now gone. I can only say that fortunately, the loss of human life was minimal, but unfortunately, we may lose even more stories if people who've lost their anchor to this place decide that it's too difficult, too painful to rebuild. And another place gains their story and Strathbogie Shire loses it. There are and will continue to be amazing examples everywhere of resilience coming together, rebuilding, support, and recovering. I don't want to sound completely without hope. The sad facts are that Strathbogie Shire has been hit with a terrible 2-year drought, rising costs hitting residents, especially farmers in that time, and now the worst fire in our Shire in living memory, or as Scott said, since the 60s. To those people who've lost their place and their story, I can only say we are with you. We are a community who will come together, rebuild, support, and recover together. It's all we have. It's supremely unfair that some among us have lost everything, but we will share all we have with you until our collective story can begin anew.
Yes, thanks for the previous comments from there. I'll be brief. I'm sure we've all got a bit to say about this because obviously we've been very busy over the last 6 weeks, as the Mayor has mentioned, in a totally unexpected way. Just a few comments. I think the obvious one is the community response has been extraordinary and gives great faith in human nature again, which is good to have, both in terms of volunteering and, of course, in donations, which have come from basically all over Eastern Australia. It's extraordinary stuff. The impact of our community, the impact on our community members. I shudder sometimes when I hear people who have not been affected say they understand. And that's not true. They don't. They mean well, and that's not a criticism. I can say I have some understanding. I've had a house burned down around me at 1 o'clock in the morning, so I understand the loss of a house and generations of memorabilia totally gone. I've shot my own livestock and many others owned by others, not because of fire, but because of commodity price collapses. And we've had some small grass fires on our property over the years, but nothing that we could be considered serious. Some people in our community have been devastated and have experienced, seen things that we who have not experienced such things could never imagine in our worst nightmares. And that's the reality that some people are facing. Their hearts are broken and their souls are aching. What I would like to say to our community is they will recover. Human spirit is incredibly resilient. They will recover, but they will never forget. Some they have had experiences that will be with them for the rest of their lives. It has become part of who they are, part of their character, but they will recover. And it is in the recovery phase, now the council must step up. We don't have the resources to address all the needs required to be addressed. Our role is to facilitate the numerous programs and funding sources to be available to the community when they need them. And that in itself is a challenge because of the complexity and finding those sources. This has been termed a 1,000-day event, and it probably will be. Therefore, the Shire must remain committed to do everything it can to stay the course. Finally, while 72% of the 12% of the Shire has been devastated, 88% has not. And we must take into consideration that we have to deliver normal council services to these residents as well over the 3 years left in our term. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You, Councillor Carlton.
Guys, we'll go around the room. Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Mayor for such a complete report. There's no need to repeat a lot of what you've covered off on, but thank you for being so thorough in your report. Before I go into some commentary on the bushfire, I'd just like to go back to a little bit of business as usual, because we have had to sort of keep representing our organisation within the community while this has all been going on. Things like attending the Golden Valley Road Safety Committee in Shepparton, which I did, the local market in Nagambie, the Australia Day event in Nagambie, the citizenship ceremonies. All of these things still have to go on while we're trying to manage this incredible event that occurred in our Shire. The meetings and the advocacy that the Mayor referred to are absolutely imperative. As the committee would have heard, they've been extensive, and it's important that all councillors supported the Mayor and the CEO with representation at those meetings, because we are your voice in this situation, and we have been loud and we have been clear as to what our asks have been. So please take comfort in the fact that we have heard our community, and we will pass those on to the areas within state government and federal government areas where we can have some effect, hopefully. Touching on the bushfire, because we could speak for hours about this, but firstly I would like to acknowledge the impact that it's had on our community, and we are part of that community. Our houses may not have been affected, but our friends and our family and the members of our community were significantly impacted, and there is a ripple effect that comes from that. So we do feel for the people that have been directly affected, and we give them our best wishes as we move forward and our support as we move forward into our recovery phase. We are there beside you. We are there fighting for you. When this all happened, the councillors sort of went into different areas of the Shire. So you may have seen some of them wherever you were positioned at the time of this particular event. You may have not seen some of them. Please don't think because you didn't see their faces they weren't out there working, because they were. My initial participation was down at the Relief and Recovery Centre at Seymour. Some have questioned why it was put at Seymour. There are processes and experience with major events, whether they be floods, whether they be fires. There are procedures and protocols that have value and logic to them. You don't put these centres where there's a possibility that the fire could change direction and suddenly that relief centre and that evacuation centre comes under fire. So you put it in an area that is safe. We were very fortunate, as the Mayor touched on, to have the incredible support of our neighbours, the Mitchell Shire, the Murrumbidgee Shire. They had a facility that was used for the floods down there, and it served the purpose of these fires absolutely brilliantly. And I want to reassure you that working in that centre, when people were coming straight out of the fires into that centre, there were people from Ruffy, Strathbogie and beyond coming to that centre. So that's what we wanted. We wanted them to know it was there for them. We've now moved from response to recovery. This recovery is going to take us at least 2 years, probably 3, if the floods are any indication of how these things go. There are people that have come forward, and rightfully so, that are getting assistance and support in all sorts of areas now, but there were many people that will come forward over the next 6 months, 12 months, and possibly thereafter, because they'll come forward at their own pace. But we need to let them know that we are there for them when they're ready to come forward. There is no pressure. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that was involved in this, whether it be the local government, whether it be the community, whether it be the emergency services, whether it be the state or federal government, whether it be the volunteers. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I'm not going to mention individuals because I don't think that's appropriate. I just want you to know that what you did to contribute to our recovery, our response initially and our recovery is very much appreciated at a personal level and organisational level. And we will continue to work forward together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Councillor Wicks.
Yeah, I mean, so much has been said, right? And I too would just like to thank yourself, Mayor Jeffrey, and CEO Quattrocchi for all you did. And of course, extend that to Deputy Mayor Hewitt Kennedy, who stepped into your role when you were very busy in your other role. And just knowing that, you know, like it has been an incredible response from our community, but that community, like you've said, doesn't stay within the bounds of our local government boundaries. And we've seen this really fantastic collaborative effort that is absolutely required in times like these across those borders and across those boundaries to have a united response to this, knowing that that's how our communities work. They don't sort of see Shire boundaries as where they sort of end, so to speak, and the collaborative work that's been demonstrated, particularly between those 4 councils, has been remarkable, and I think has really put us in a place for a great recovery because of that collaborative work and that sort of shared experience and that shared understanding of working with these incredible communities of that Strathbogie Tableland area, all the way down toward Alex. And so, yeah, the sort of area of it and the scope of it is large. And also just for the, like, I think it's, and you touched on it, Councillor Stevens, that the ongoing nature of this is something that I think as both a council and a community, we are going to have to be really acutely aware of, that balancing that sort of ongoing recovery effort whilst also continuing to serve the community in our substantive role as a council and what it is that we do. And so just this complexity of holding those two things of being the recovery organisation for our community, but also continuing to be Strathbogie Shire Council and delivering on everything that we are legislated to do under that role. And hope that is, yeah, that as we go forward, we will continue to support our community right across the Shire, but knowing that a lot of our attention right now is certainly focused on those that have been impacted by the Longwood fire.
Councillor Wicks.
Okay, lucky last. I just want to spread my report off with a couple of different subjects. So firstly, bushfire. My heart goes out to those that lost their homes, their feed, their fencing, their day-to-day life. Wonderfully though.
You got it.
Why does this keep happening? Can you come and read it?
Another one to read.
No, I reckon I could do it. Last time I did take a break, but this time I reckon I can do it.
Good on you, Vic.
Wonderfully though, you have the whole community to lean on. And while it might not be your usual way of life, please let your community look after you. Oh, please,
Let me read it for you.
Oh, you'll be right, Vicky.
I want to say yes, but you also want to read this. Yes, for God's sake, I'm a big girl. No, just, be patient. I know this is going to be a long meeting. Okay, so I am enormously proud of my community. I am enormously proud of the support movement. I'm going to blame menopause. Okay, I am enormously proud of the Feed Hub, the Ruffy Recovery Hub, the Longwood community supporting the CFA, Blaze Aid moving in and getting feet on the ground and directly volunteering goodwill in an extremely helpful way, as well as offering roles for those unable to provide fencing labour, roles caring for volunteers, making meals, creating activities, and just generally contributing to a volunteer community. My respect and gratitude for politicians like Annabelle Cleland. She has performed like an Olympic athlete, and it's a long time since I've really respected and looked at a politician for leadership. Annabelle, you have my respect. And I'm a proud member of this council who have really put in, whether visible or not. Please let me tell you that this has been an all-in journey. And to quote our CEO in a very emotional speech, Strathbogie might be small, but we are mighty. All right, that's enough for bushfires. Okay, Australia Day. I had the pleasure of attending Australia Day here in Euroa at the Third Age Club. We heard from our CEO, Rochelle Quattrocchi, a local business owner, Michael Tian, and the tremendous Annabelle Cleland. It was a special day. The quintessential essence of Australian spirit was palpable. It was the proudest I have ever been. God's sake, woman, to be Australian and a Strathbogie resident. Be patient. It's hurting me as much as it's hurting you, let me tell you, if you've got tears. Okay, it was the proudest I've ever been to an Australian and a Strathbogie resident. The day shadowed only by the absence of a citizenship ceremony. It was for that reason that the following day I did not attend the citizenship ceremony, as my stand personally against the separation of Australia Day and welcoming new citizens. We have such a wonderful opportunity to share the privilege of being Australian. I'm supportive of consideration of the current date of the consideration of the current date Australia Day falls on. We as Australians all deserve to be proud and to come together and celebrate all that it means to be Australian. Okay, now to something that's a bit less emotional, so hopefully this one's all right. The third thing I wanted to chat about was our local pools. I think the pool is a really important place as a social meeting place. It's an educational asset. We need water safety, survival and competence for our children and our general community. Management of this resource is really important. The atmosphere, in my personal observation, is cold and distant. While staff will engage if approached, I haven't experienced a warm, nurturing environment. 20-kilogram bag of pool chemical dumped within 10 metres of small children swimming. The staff member was simply doing their job and adding chemicals prior to pool closure to enable a timely departure. A small child was being held by their ankles and dumped in the water to the shoulder by an older child, possibly known by that child. My first awareness of this incident was the child crying loudly at the end of the pool. It was then reported to me by an adult walking along the pool that the lifeguard was in the vicinity but did not act in what they thought was appropriate of a lifeguard. The water quality, I've been told directly that the white fibres in the pool are undissolved salt. I don't accept this. It looks far more like fibres of duck poo throughout the pool, which fit the persistent duck poo around the edges of the pool, which is very disappointing. The pool covers remain rolled up at the edge of the pool, unused. The water temperature should be much higher than it is at the moment, and children are getting cold in swim lessons halfway through February, which I find enormously disappointing. What this points to me is that local management of the pools is essential. And while our current as a council view is to outsource management of pools, I think we should be doing more to bring it in-house. And by in-house, I mean community managed. And hopefully more people in the community actually report their experiences in the pool, so that this isn't my personal experience being shared in this manner, but it is many community members being shared, because my experience isn't on its own. Thank you.
Councillor Alston. Well done. If I'd have broken down in tears, then we'd all be in trouble.
Oh my God. I've had a day, but I can tell you.
Our Deputy Mayor Claire Hewitt-Kennedy is a late apology to the meeting, but I do have her Deputy Mayor's report, which I will read out as well. As acting Mayor during the fire emergency period, the first days during the height of the recent fires impacting Longwood and surrounding communities, I undertook the role of acting Mayor during the very critical phase of the emergency response. During this period, responsibilities included representing council at the Incident Control Centre briefings, liaising directly with the CFA, Victoria Police, SCS and other emergency services, engaging with state and federal representatives to advocate for immediate and ongoing support, visiting relief and recovery centres, including the Longwood Football Netball Club, staging area, Ruffy and Longwood Hay Depot, supporting affected residents and families who experienced loss, providing media engagement to ensure accurate and timely community communication, working at the relief centre triaging many misplaced residents, working closely with council CEO and executive to maintain operational continuity. Resilience of our community was evident throughout this period. Volunteers, local businesses, emergency personnel and residents demonstrated extraordinary strength, generosity and leadership. In addition to emergency responsibilities, duties as Deputy Mayor included attendance at community meetings and recovery forums, advocacy for recovery funding and support at state and federal levels, supporting disaster relief initiatives and community-led recovery efforts, engaging with affected landholders regarding cleanup and infrastructure restoration, participating in governance and strategic meetings to ensure legislative compliance. Throughout this period, I've continued to uphold the obligations of the Council Code of Conduct and Local Government Act. Despite emergency circumstances, Council has maintained sound governance, transparent communication and strategic decision-making aligned with community need. Moving forward, the focus now shifts from response to recovery and rebuilding. Council's role is to ensure residents are supported through rebuilding processes, funding pathways remain accessible, mental health and wellbeing supports are visible, and infrastructure and environmental restoration is prioritised. I acknowledge the extraordinary efforts of my fellow councillors, emergency services, council staff, volunteers and community members during this challenging time. Strathbogie has demonstrated strength, compassion and unity, and we will continue to stand alongside our community throughout recovery and renewal. Thank you. Moving now on to page 7, item 10, public question time. Thanks to all those people who submitted questions for the meeting today, and a reminder that your questions must be lodged 30 hours prior to the meeting, and no person may submit more than 2 questions to any one meeting. We'll now proceed with our public questions. Our first 2 questions come from Robin Weatherall. Thank you for your questions, Robin. Would you like me to read your questions or can I read them? Or would you like to read them?
You may do that, Mayor.
I was hoping you might save me some voice. Question 1. The recent catastrophic bushfire emergency has made one thing clear. Strathbogie Shire Council has failed to protect our community. As the primary authority responsible for our safety and health, the council must be held accountable. Catastrophic fire days happen roughly every 10 years, yet the Shire has lost huge amounts of farmland and property, especially east of the Hume Freeway. This disaster was worsened by Council's lack of support for the CFA, which has led to the loss of important fire management policies that 30 years ago made sure every road had cleared vegetation to protect homes and farms. The Instead of maintaining these vital fire buffers, Strathbogie's road and fire management policies have allowed young trees and dense vegetation to crowd right up to the roads. Little effort to clear them. This negligence puts us all at risk. We've also seen the proud fire protection spirit of the Longwood CFA disappear over time, replaced by green policies that prioritise vegetation over safety. It's time for council to wake up, take responsibility and overhaul their fire and road management practices to protect our community. We deserve better. Will council listen? Will council do better? How? Please explain. Thanks for your first question, Robert. The Longwood Berries Lane fire has caused widespread and significant loss and damage across our municipality. The event has had profound, far-reaching and enduring impacts on individuals, families and communities, as well as on livelihoods, natural and agricultural landscapes, critical infrastructure and local and regional economics. In line with our municipal emergency management plan, a review and debrief of the fire will be undertaken. Furthermore, the municipal emergency management plan and the municipal fire management plan will also be reviewed and updated this year. The parliamentary inquiry into the 2026 summer fires across Victoria will provide council and anyone with the opportunity to make submissions that considers 11 key areas, including the preparation and planning by government, emergency services agencies and the community ahead of fire season, including management of public land and roadsides, public and private land and roadsides. We've also undertaken and will continue to advocate to the state government to ensure that roadsides are appropriately managed. Question 2, also from Robert. Congratulations, our sale yard state-of-the-art truck wash has been open for business for 1 week. And the cost of more than 1 million, exceeding the $500,000 sustainable budget, open for 1 week. Will council disclose the full electronic bank able receipts for week 1 of its operations? Thank you for your question, Robert. The operation of the truck wash has been welcomed and we've received good feedback from the users. The increased prediction for income will be monitored as part of a regular budget review, and confirmation of actual income can be provided at our quarterly budget reviews. Our next question comes from Neil Brown. We've also received similar questions from Katie Williams. Therefore, under clause 35.11 of the Strathbogie Shire Council Governance Rules, I'll answer these questions together. Neil, would you like to read your question, or can I read the question? Excellent. Question to Strathbogie Mayor and some Shire councillors on Frost Street pedestrian underpass. When will the Shire Mayor and some of the councillors start thinking about community safety and lives before money? If we have a major bushfire on the northwest side of Euroa and all the roads are blocked, Frost Street pedestrian underpass will be a quick escape route for the community safety. So that's one of the reasons it must be reinstated for the safety of Euroa community. Thank you. Thanks for your question, Neil. In answering your question and other like questions, pedestrian access across the railway corridor is not identified for emergency access, but rather general community use. Specifically regarding the Frost Street underpass, Council made the decision on the 17th of June 2025 to permanently close this underpass. We've received 2 questions from Tom Maher. Thanks for the questions, Tom. Tom, would you like me to read your question? Would you like to read your question, or would you like me to?
You may read them out. If I read them out, I might add a bit more to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We get some more.
Add a bit more.
Have a drink, Mr. Mayor.
Question 4. 1. Roads. Harry's Creek Road. I've been asking about this road for many years, always told an excuse after another. And since 2022 to the 17th of February 2026, this road is a death trap. Why is there lies told about this road, as this was not damaged due to flooding? Thanks for your question, Tom. Council has secured TAC funding for implementation of safety improvements along Harry's Creek Road. Works include installation of protective guardrail, together with speed reduction along the road. Additionally, Council has secured funding to undertake repairs of the road slip, which is due out to contract shortly. Maintenance along the road will be reviewed in line with concerns raised with council. Tom's second question. Shire of Strathbogie Municipal Fire Prevention Plan. Does this Shire have an updated document? If so, where is it? And if not, why not? Thanks for your question, Tom. There are two documents that may interest you. The Municipal Emergency Management Plan, which is called the MEP 2023 to 2026, and the Municipal Fire Management Plan 2023 to 2026, which is a sub-plan of the MEP. These two plans are due for review in May 2026 and updated 2027 to 2030. Plans will be developed. The plans are developed by the Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committee, a cross-agency emergency management partnership required under the Emergency Management Act 2013. The plans have been submitted in accordance with the requirements of this Act. A copy of each of these plans can be found on the Council's website. Final questions have been received from Marie Marr. Yep. Do you want me to read those, Marie?
You begins.
To the CEO. Councillors have been elected by ratepayers who take a seat at the council table. Sadly, we have a councillor sitting at the council table that speaks rude and gives nasty looks to people in the gallery. What are you going to do about this? Thanks for your question, Marie. I'd encourage you to speak directly with myself about your concern. And a question on rates. Why does this council continue to have a major problem in the rates department? Thanks for your second question, Marie. I encourage you to speak with Director Tingay to raise the specifics of your concern. Moving on now to page 8. Item 11 on the agenda. Condolence and commendation motion. Community recognition of preparedness, Longwood Berries Lane fire. The purpose of this report is for Council to recognise the resilience and strength shown by communities and reaffirm a shared commitment to recovery and renewal. Councillors, I'll now call for a mover to the motion. Given the magnitude of devastation to our community, I wish to move this motion myself. I move that Council 1 expresses its sincere condolences to all residents, families, businesses, community organisations and council staff affected by the recent devastation within our municipality and surrounding districts. 2, acknowledges the scale and impact of the devastation, noting the significant personal, environmental and economic loss suffered by our community. 3, recognises and commends the extraordinary resilience, generosity and leadership of our local community, including volunteers, service organisations, council staff and emergency services, whose collective efforts protected lives and supported those in need. 4, affirms Council's strong ongoing commitment to recovery, state and federal advocacy and partnership with affected communities and agencies. 5, requests a report from officers within 12 months that reviews Council's response and recovery to the Longwood Berries Lane fire event, capturing lessons learned to improve future events. 6, recognise that Strathbogie Shire Council, Mitchell Shire Council, Mansfield Shire Council and Murrindindi Shire Council have worked collectively throughout the response, relief and recovery, and that this will continue through the form of a Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, pending the resolution of item 11.4.2 of this agenda. Councillors, is there a seconder? Councillor House. Thank you. Councillors, I'd like to speak to the motion very briefly in the hope of retaining my voice for the end of this meeting. As we all know and have heard tonight, we've, as a region, have suffered through successive natural disasters, including most recently the floods of 2022, probably ongoing, and now the Longwood fires. Those being the worst since 1965, depending on how you calculate it. This has had enormous impact to our community and downstream impacts to our economy. And importantly, it'll have a very long-lasting recovery period. Would other councillors like to speak to the motion?
When this motion was first presented, I wondered if it was necessary, and then I think upon reflection, having it actually formally as a motion documented within our meetings, and I think it's really important to reflect on the devastation and the efforts and affirm the ongoing commitments. So it's really easy to be out there in the community and feel unsupported. And there are limits to what council can do to support. However, know that the support is there in an ongoing way to recovery, no matter what the disaster is, whether it be a bushfire, a flood, pandemic. God forbid we have another one. And I think that the 6th point's really important because I continually hear that it's unusual for councils or local shire groups to work across borders in collaboratively. And in this bushfire response, there has been a very strong support with Strathbogie, Mitchell, Mansfield and Munner-and-Dindy all working together collectively. And it's actually really nice to be able to share the limitations of what you can and can't do, to be able to bounce ideas and just to generally feel like you're all in it together. So that's been one really powerful and great benefit to this response effort.
It's the household. Councillors like to speak to the motion. That's the whole way.
Very briefly, of course, I fully support this motion. And I support all the detail that those 6 sections have. I'd just like to read the first words of 2, 3, and 4, which is acknowledges, recognizes, and affirms. And that really distills what this community needs: acknowledgement, recognition, and affirmation. The rest, as they say, is just the details, but that's what we need to convey to this community: acknowledging, recognizing, and affirming their struggle.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. Just very quickly, the first point expresses sincere condolences to all residents, families, businesses, community organisations, and the staff affected by this event. I'd just like to make specific reference to Mr. Max Hobson, who lost his life, and his family. Lots of life is beyond words, but hopefully it will be captured in points. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, it's there's no public chamber lawsuits going to not agree entirely with these 6 points in this resolution. And given the seriousness of this event, which, as you quite correctly said, is one of a multi-generational events, which is going to have a significant lasting effect on a great deal of people in our community, I think it's entirely appropriate that this be recorded in such a way in the official record of this council. For better or for worse, this is one of those sliding door moments for this organisation and this community. And I think this is a very appropriate way to record it as such.
Thank you, Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Ms. Jeffrey. I think it's picking up another point in there around the ongoing commitment to advocacy. That's a really important part for our council to play. It's, from kind of the smallest things of how do we get funding to be able to dispose of the waste from the incredible amount of waste that's been generated by the fire and make all that work for everyone that was impacted, to talking to the government agency leaders who perhaps are in charge of or can talk to the state members that are in charge of the criteria for application around funding, and that ensuring that the most people impacted within the fireground, not just our shire, but right across that area, have access to that funding, because currently there's some limitations to that, and we've recognised that, and we're working really hardly to ensure that they have the best access to those supports and grants and funding opportunities there. So I think that advocacy part, as well. And we've seen that already playing out in the work that's been done, I think.
Thank you. We've all spoken to the motion. I'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you. Now move on to item 11.1, strategic and statutory planning. On page 10. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification before we proceed? No. Councillors, is there a motion, and can you please state what your motion is? Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Jeffrey. I would like to move a motion as written in the recommendation on page 10 of our agendas.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? What else? Is there any opposition? Okay. Would any councillor would like to speak to the motion?
Will we save some time? I can briefly.
Councillor Hassel?
Yeah. This report is regarding planning applications for the December quarter. Pleasingly, there is 35 new planning applications and 20 having been decided. It is great that Strathbogie, despite the bushfire, is still going forward. There is hope in the air, and hopefully over the next 6 months we see many new planning applications and building permits as people rebuild.
Thank you, Councillor Hassel. Anyone else wishes to speak to the motion? Then I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Councillors, we now move to item 11.2.1 on page 20. The purpose of this report is to inform council and the community of community grants or variations approved under delegation by the Chief Executive Officer or relevant director for the period 1st of December 2025 and 31st of January 2026. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification? No. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Is there a motion, and can you please state what your motion is?
Yes, I'll move, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Carson.
I move that the council, the recommendation on 20.1 and 2.
Councillor Carson, can I have a seconder? Councillor Stevens. Is the motion opposed? Or does any councillor wish to speak to the motion?
No. Kasky.
Council?
I'm really interested in the Roa Chamber of Business and Commerce and the Twilight Local Shopping Christmas event. I'd like to see more of these events. They're so much fun and bring the community together, having the kids all play, sitting out on Binney Street and listening to some music, eating some nice food, sharing a glass of wine and a laugh is wonderful. I am so sad that it costs $4,500 to do it. And if there was a way of minimising that so it could be done more often, then I think we should wholeheartedly support it, because it is a great thing for Euroa and Binney Street.
Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Binks.
Just briefly to acknowledge that one of those grants was for the Tablelands Community Centre in Ruffy, and just wanted to acknowledge the remarkable effort of the Committee of Management of that facility over the years that have done an incredible job and are now in a pretty challenging part of what next. But yeah, just wanted to give them a shout out because I know that they've put in an enormous amount of volunteer hours to have a really successful community centre in that community. So yeah, just a bit of an acknowledgement.
Now now put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Councillors, we now move to item 11.3.1 on page 24, which is the quarterly report of Capital Works. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on Council's Capital Works program for the period to the 31st of December 2025. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? No? Is there a motion? Can you please state what your motion is? Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the recommendation on pages 24 and 25 of our papers be adopted as the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Carlson. Is there any opposition? Councillor Hassel, opposition? Thank you. Given that, Councillor Holloway, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am fully and completely supportive of this motion in line with officers' recommendations. The quarterly report on Capital Works is normally something of a pro forma item with little that represents transformative change. This particular one, however, contains 8 new items, which is exciting in itself. I'd like to highlight 2 of them. First is the big ticket one of allocating $1 million in council funding over 3 years to Kirwan's Bridge rectification works. This will potentially unlock $5 million in co-contribution funding. So from a cost benefit perspective, this is a smart move with every 20 cents the Shire contributes, potentially receiving $1 back. But the value of this deal is not what really excites me about it. What I find amazing is that this is the first step towards a proper, sound, workable solution to the problem of connectivity for the community of Kirwan's Bridge and indeed most Lake Ngambia residents and businesses generally. My understanding is the proposed solution would allow for vehicular traffic up to and including medium rigid truck traffic. For over 2 decades, they've been advocating for a proper solution that allows for cars and trucks. And this will hopefully put an end to this community being perpetually disadvantaged. Not only is there a safety element, as medium rigid trucks includes fire trucks, the connectivity for this community and the lake as a whole will be transformative. The other item I'd like to discuss is the much smaller in scale and cost, but nearly as transformative, and that's the new footpath being put in from 23 to 57 Mansfield Road in Euroa. This is the stretch going south out of Euroa between Kennedy Street and Boundary Road South. This stretch of road has never had a footpath, even though there are a significant number of households, many dozens, that regularly use it to walk to the shops in the town centre. What makes the current state so problematic is that the existing nature strip on both sides of the road are both hilly and rutted, forcing mobility impaired people to walk in the street rather than on the nature strip, which they do, and this represents a hazard to themselves and to traffic. So I'm over the moon that this new footpath made it onto our Capital Works plan relatively quickly after the issue was brought to officers' attention. This is a big win for residents in the southern half of Euroa, most especially the elderly and children on bikes. So for the benefit that these 2 exemplar projects will bring, as well as the sound project management progress that the rest of the Capital Works report indicates, I fully commend this motion being adopted. And just as a postscript, I'd like to say hurrah for the truck wash finally being completed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. No, second.
Reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hassel, as an opposer of this motion.
Yeah, firstly, I'd just like to say I support the ongoing improvement of the asset management that council is actioning. There is some very good work being done The reporting is improving, the tracking's improving, the project management is absolutely improving. Where my objection comes from is mostly focused on point 3, approve the conditional reallocation of $1 million from deferred projects and other savings as council's contribution to Kerwin's Bridge rectification and grant application, noting that this allocation will only be committed in the grant application is successful and otherwise remain available for other council priorities. So I think equity across the municipal community is aspirational for a 4-year council term. Significant projects come around and require significant investment and benefit a pocket of the community, but it's critical to champion and exploit opportunities that present. And I appreciate that there are, there are Sam Birrells and Annabelle Clevelands out there that are actively seeking to support a grant application for the repair of Kerwin's Bridge. As a first-time council, this presents challenges for me. Council decide to decline the significant investment of an upgraded pedestrian crossing and instead permanently close a crossing, citing ongoing maintenance as a major consideration. Certainly the community outcry has been significant, resulting in one of the largest petitions our Shire has received and a motivated community uprising with Frost Street Underpass being raised in Parliament. Looking back, $350,000 compensation for the crossing closure, $200,000 reinvested in an alternate connection for, ironically, to improve the connection and community access to Binney Street. Now the Frost Street Underpass was closed for the benefit of $150,000. Was it worth it? Reviewing decisions is a fundamental element of continuous improvement. And I know that one of the strongest arguments for closing Frost Street was ongoing maintenance. Kerwin's Bridge needs $1 million co-contribution for a grant application. To my way of thinking, $1 million is 5% of the rate base of our municipality. This asset failed an insurance claim post-flood damage, citing poor condition prior to the flood. The Kerwin's Bridge community shared with me in the Meet the Councillor period that they believe council to have short invested in the maintenance of the bridge. So over a long period of time, the bridge deteriorated and annual maintenance did not keep up. For tens of years, a council just like this one, year on year, could not find adequate financial resources to maintain this bridge. Today I learned the current allocation for bridge maintenance or bridge and major and significant culverts is $70,000 and it's shared across 150 bridges and significant culverts. So how much maintenance can a council with the rate base of Strathbogie Shire bear? If the co-contribution is committed, what effect does that have on other infrastructure investments and opportunities? If the past 20 to 30 years of Strathbogie Council, councillors and the organisation executive could not find the budget to maintain Kerwin's Bridge, will this $1 million, if successful, be a blessing, rebuilding a historic bridge, a vital connection for the Kerwin's Bridge community, or a long-term thorn once again? Maintenance requirements that the rate base of the Strathbogie Council cannot fulfil. Let me remind my colleagues that the current budget for bridge and culvert maintenance for 150 bridges and significant culverts is $70,000 per annum.
Thank you, Councillor Howson. Do the other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. The motion before us is speaking to a redistribution of existing finances to gain benefit for the community by saving a lot of money if we can get a grant application for the reinstatement and rehabilitation of Kerwin's Bridge primarily. You cannot let opportunities like this go by. If we can get our hands on $5 million by committing $1 million, we would be negligent not to do that. Since I spoke on the election circuit and since I've been in council, I've spoken many, many times about spending other people's money, not spending the ratepayers' money per se. So any opportunity we have to use other people's money through grants is what we need to be doing. We pay high rates in this Shire. We have a very limited resource to those rates. So this would be negligent and stupid not to look at the opportunities that this offers. As for the comments from the previous speaker about, the previous council not finding the dollars for the maintenance of this, did they not find it or did they not look? Did they just ignore it? And this often happens with aged assets. They just get older and older and older. And when they're not maintained, then the bills go up and up and up. And I'd say that's what's happened with this one. And we're at risk of doing it with other aged assets that we have in our community. So maintenance is something that we need to accept responsibility for and not just ignore. The comparison to the underpass here, I've got to admit, I find that quite bizarre. I'm sorry. In that it's comparing. Sorry.
You find it bizarre.
I'm sorry.
Councillor Stevens.
Speaking. It's comparing apples to oranges, in the sense that we're talking about an asset here that is registered on the State Heritage Register of significant historical value. Now, I don't know about people's awareness of the Heritage Register, but to get something on it, it's extremely hard to do. So the fact that this asset is registered says something to the heritage significance of this build. I've not heard the same about the underpass. Another difference is the issues around this one. Yes, connectivity, and could be similarity there, but we're talking about an 18-kilometre trip around this particular bridge if it's not reinstated, and the risk that that poses to the community. If you've got a delay 18 kilometres, it's not good roads, you're not going to be driving at 100 kilometres an hour. So if you've got a delay of half an hour for an ambulance to get to the community or a fire truck or the police to get to a community, there are significant risks. Once again, don't see the similarities with the underpass. But going back to this document is speaking to capital works programs. That's what's on the table.
That's the question.
And this is an opportunity for us on behalf of the ratepayers to put some money aside in the hope that we will be able to secure a significant grant to help us bring this bridge back to practical use for the reasons that have been mentioned. I just want to quickly acknowledge that there was some correspondence provided to the councillors by the community in relation to this. They're on behalf of Go Ngambia and the Ngambia community. Thank you for that information. I think the other thing we need to acknowledge is that this has been with the community and the council for a number of years. The more you delay on these things, the more the cost increases. So it's time to bite the bullet and to have a positive commitment to this. And we have done that. We have voted on our advocacy priorities. We have a document that we present to all of our state and federal representatives that are prepared to listen to us about our advocacies. This is on it. So we've made that decision of council to push this forward. Here is our opportunity to do it. So for that reason, I recommend point 3 very strongly. I do note other correspondence I'd just like to acknowledge from a lady up in Strathbogie in relation to the shifting of money and how that might impact on other projects. Yes, unfortunately, that's what's going to happen. In that we have had floods. We are $4 million in the red from the floods. We still have not put back the infrastructure that we need to with the floods. We've had the drought. We've got the fires. We are pushing things uphill. We are never going to be able to meet all our expectations of the community or the councillors in moving forward. And unfortunately, that is the reality of what's facing us. We have to do the best we can with what we've got. And in this particular situation, we've got an opportunity to get money from elsewhere that we're not going to be asking for our ratepayers to pay for. So for that reason, I support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Can I remind the gallery, please, no talking while councillors are debating, please. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Castle, would you like your right of reply?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, it's the old saying, the world is always an exception to the rule, and this particular asset is pretty unique. It's unfortunate that it lands on our patch, but that's part of our responsibility and we have to address it as best we possibly can. We can never, ever afford to fully fund the maintenance of this bridge. It's way, way beyond the capacity of this council. And when a grant application is put in for $5 million, it's the amount of money that could be spent on this bridge we could never even dream of raising from our own rate base. It just would not be possible. The bridge is heritage listed. The community at Kerwin's Bridge have an extraordinary attachment to it, for want of a better word. It's a critical piece of infrastructure and has been for generations over there. But it is a bit of a monster. I'd like to remind the community too that even though we're committed to pay these funds, no guarantee that we will, because the grant has to be successful. And we're in a pretty competitive environment when it comes to grants. There's no shortage of disasters going on in Australia at the moment, so there'll be an unlimited demand for funding from all sorts of people everywhere. So really, we find ourselves in a position whereby we take the opportunity that presents itself to us, but we simply let the bridge fall down. That's the basic choice. And I would certainly take the opportunity. In terms of other bridges, yes, there is the issue of the maintenance program, but the vast majority of those bridges are cement. They've got a 100-year lifespan. Their maintenance requirements are very, very minimal. This is a special case, standalone, pretty much unique in the state of Victoria. And it's our unfortunate responsibility to step up to the plate on this and expend these monies if they come available from the federal treasury.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Councillor Holloway as mover, would you like to exercise the right of reply?
Briefly,
It's a qualifying question.
Question of clarification.
Yeah, if that's right. I am, this will be a different question, and I'm really hoping for a not, can we take that on notice response? Just an educated kind of
Councillor Household,
ballpark.
who are you directing the question to?
Well, I'm directing it to you, and you'll pass it on to the CEO and then whoever's relevant. But what I'm interested to know is, on an annual basis, what should we be very fortunate and very successful, and our $6 million grant application, because we've got a co-contribution, our $6 million investment in the bridge is successful. What would be a likely annual budget for just the bridge maintenance? Ballpark, there is nobody that's going to hold anybody to the dollar.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Household. I'll pass it over to CEO Trocchi.
Thank you, Linnea and Councillor House, for your question. I will refer that to Director Vanger to answer that question.
The expenditure on a new asset that's of that very nature is less and degrades capacity, degrades over time, and so the need to expend increases over time. With 150 bridges and culverts, this becomes a bridge that's one of 151st assets. So it's for council to maintain it. Is it what we call routine maintenance? Well built, one would anticipate that the lifespan of a recrafted is going to be in the order of 25.
Need an annual maintenance figure, because I'm figuring that if Cross Street is 10 grand, that bridge is going to be more. I just want to understand what it is.
Councillor Household.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Director Vanger, have you got a percentage or an amount of what that bridge would be?
Just the annual maintenance spend, sorry.
On that particular bridge,
In an ongoing.
there will be a routine task of ensuring that the scuppers on the bridge are clean and that the guide posts and what have you are effectively. You could be looking at $5,000–7,000.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Back to you as the mover of this motion for a right of reply.
yes, thank you. I commend Councillor Halsall on her attention to detail and her attention to financial discipline, not only with respect to spending this money, but with respect to equitable distribution of our capital works money on bridges. I am 100% with you on that. Where we differ is the fact that this is a strategic legacy issue that we have inherited. My understanding from the community rep spokespeople in Kerwin's Bridge is they've been advocating for this sort of proper solution for 25 years and getting lipstick on a pig type solutions, if any, from the Shire. So we're spending $1 million, or we're possibly spending $1 million over 3 years. Looking backward, if we have spent that over the past 25 years, it would add up to 40,000 a year. So that is what we are spending to get ourselves out of 25 years of affected neglect. There's one other thing with which I differ, you, Councillor Halsall, and that is that this is a strategic asset that is more than just a bridge. A, it's a lifeline and a safety line for this community. And B, it is an integral part of tourism and experience around Lake Nagambie. This would unlock a lot of potential visitor and tourist potential and dollars. So I really, while I'm with you, Councillor Halsall, on the dollars and cents, we need to spend it. We need to get this legacy issue off of our books and hopefully get a proper solution so we can move forward. Some of those other bridges that we have to maintain are just culverts, essentially. This is a huge headline asset. We need to take care of it and get it done.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Everyone, councillors have had the opportunity to debate. I'll now put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Moving now to page 43, item 11.441, final municipal monitor report. The purpose of this report is for council to note the final report from the municipal monitor, Ms. Marjones, appointed to Strathbogie Shire by the Minister for Local Government in November 2024. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed?
Yes, you'd support a quick toilet break.
So we'll adjourn the meeting for 3 minutes. While we went down. We're now on page 43. Item 11.4.1, final useful warrants of report. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation.
So moved, Mr Chair. So moved.
Vivian.
Just thought,
Councillor Carson.
yeah, I'm moving the recommendation on page 43.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Stevens. Is the motion opposed? Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion?
Briefly, some other councillors might wish to add some more depth to my comments. The point that I would like to make, apart from the fact that we all in this chamber valued the monitor's presence here. That's goes without saying. We all heard this from her wisdom and advice. But the conclusion at the end of the report, if I can just find it. Here it is. It's in blue. It's quite brief. It's quite specific as well. The recommendation to the minister includes two things. Do this on page 55 of the report here, of our report, sorry. Consistent with IBAC's recommendation in the Sandon report, which I haven't read, the minister considers mandating the appropriately experienced independent member on all council CEO Employment Remuneration Committee hold the position of the chair, and I think that that's something that we did. I think that was a very valuable exercise all around. I think us as members of the committee and the whole council very benefited from that that process, particularly as there were 4 people in the chamber who are not familiar with the industry. That gave everyone space and oxygen to actually consider the issue without undue stress of chairing a meeting. And of course, the second point, I'm very much strongly in favour of local government consider the impact on small rural councils with limited resources when proposing introducing new reporting obligations for local government. I'd really like to make that retrospective. I think that we should make some submission at some point in time, not now, of course, whereby we present a model claim, for want of a better word, where we are already obliging, complying with all manner of strange requests from the Victorian government, and just make an assessment whether or not they are actually adding value to our organisation performance or our community. And I think there might be many of them that are not. We're not as big as councils in Melbourne who have 300,000-400,000 people. We don't have the resources, we don't have the staff time, and the financial resources. And I think it's a real issue for small rural councils. We don't have enough money to commit a major fraud anyway, so we can't. And I back investigating Shepparton, just as a matter of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Carson. Councillor Stevens, a seconder, would you like to?
Please, very quickly. Thank you. No, I'll speak to it. There's 3 points to this recommendation. Note the report basically respond to the local government minister, giving a commitment to undertake the work that's outlined and authorise the report to be uploaded to the council website for the information of the community. I would just like to thank Monitor Allen for the contributions that she made to us for the 12 months that she was with us, or nearly 12 months, I think it was. I think the experience, the insight, the knowledge was of tremendous support to us. I'm a recycle councillor, but I've not had a monitor before, and I greatly valued the fact that we had a monitor there to be able to run things by her. And as a new councillor, I would have loved to have had a monitor. So I don't see any negativity with this except the cost to the organisation. I hope the community see that the decision was not made by us, but the resulting decision was of absolute benefit to us and thus therefore to the community. We do have to give an undertaking, apart from the recommendations that have been put in the report. We do have to give an undertaking, I think, to meet the areas that she's encouraging us to continue to work in and to improve upon. And very briefly, there's only 4 dot points. Working to generate reliable information, establish systems for informed asset management decisions. A lot of that work has already been done. So that's fabulous. Consider adopting the model local governance rules when they're available. That's a statewide review that's going on. We will have input into that. Continue the good practices that support collaboration between councillors and councillors and the executive team, including the regular team development workshops, council meeting evaluations and councillor-only time to further develop their competency as a councillor team. We're always learning. Doesn't matter how long you've been in local government, you can always improve, you can always learn. And the last one being follow through on the implementation of the advice to undertake training on working through complex community issues. Well, haven't we had a few of those? And we're always going to be learning in that area as well. So I think the advice is very sound. And once again, I'd just like to thank Monitor Allen for everything she has provided to us and the support we've been on here. Thank you.
Thanks, councillor Steve. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Housen.
It was a pleasure to read the final municipal monitor report, as was the pleasure to have the support of Monitor Mark Allen. As a new councillor, our monitor provided me guidance, support, clarity and rubrics, often and required. Monitor Allen was able to assist our council group to develop and embed values, vision, reflective practices and assist us shape our genuine desire to work together and perform our duties in line with our values and ensure our success for the duration of our term. Should I have the opportunity as a councillor to work with a municipal monitor again, I will welcome the opportunity. My experience may have been particularly positive as a result of Monitor Allen's management and leadership style, her open and considerate counsel and her willingness to have difficult conversations openly and on an equal footing. I only wish that she further recommended that small rural local government organisations have the monitor provided and waive the monitor costs.
Thanks, councillor Housen. Any other councillors? Councillor Holloway.
2 points I'd like to make. The first is a thank you to Monitor Allen for her constructive, positive, helpful mentoring of us as a new council, some experienced councillors, but a new council cohort. She was a wellspring of knowledge and she was always constructive and positive in the way she went about things. So I am absolutely just thrilled that we had her assistance for a year. The second point I'd like to make is there are 2 formal recommendations in this report. Recommendation 1 essentially affirms what we were already doing. Recommendation 2 basically asks local government Victoria to assist us and other small rural councils in our reporting burdens. I think this overall is an extraordinary affirmation of us as a council cohort and as a larger organization. And I'm not a reader of many of these things. I have read a few, some about other councils. The fact that we got 2 formal recommendations, neither of which are basically a kind of a to improve our processes is just extraordinary. And I think we should be proud of where we've come in a year and a bit to get there. So yes, thank you to Monitor Allen. And this is a great outcome.
Thank you, councillor Holloway. Councillor Banks.
Thanks, Mayor Jeffrey. I'd like to also extend my gratitude to Monitor Mark Allen for her work with us over the time. But I think more so, I would just like to thank all my fellow councillors for so willingly working with Monitor Allen. I think without all of our participation and willingness to take on that mentoring, to engage in her presence and her ability to assist us in our roles, we might not have this wonderful report in front of us. And it's not often you get to say you've got a wonderful monitor's report, but I think we can confidently say, as you've alluded to, Councillor Holloway, that the recommendations there are really about improvement for the industry rather than for improvement of us as a group of councillors or a council group. And I think that that is something to be commended of all of us as a group. And I'd just like to really thank you for participating as you did.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. I would also very briefly like to thank Monitor Mark Allen for her expertise, oversight and freely sharing all of her experience with us and helping to bring us together as a council or group, but also work together with the CEO and the rest of the organisation. Not every council escapes its administrator and 2 monitors with a new councillor group straight up. And I think it's something that we should be incredibly proud of, and we should continue to work in the same collaborative way in the best interest of our communities going forward. So it's a really proud moment for me as mayor and a proud moment for the council group and organisation. And we shouldn't forget that and where we've come from. That being said, I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you. We now move to page 57 of the agenda. Item 11.4.2. Memorandum of Understanding, Strathbogie, Murrumbidgee, Mansfield and Mitchell Shires 2026 bushfire recovery. The purpose of this report is for Council to endorse the Memorandum of Understanding January 2026 bushfire relief, recovery and advocacy partnership. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please? Statement of motion is Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. My motion is as per the recommendation on page 57, the council endorse the Memorandum of Understanding January 26 bushfire relief, recovery and advocacy partnership.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Can I have a second of that? Please, Councillor Holloway. Is the motion opposed? I wish to speak to the motion. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. The purpose and background of this is a memorandum of understanding is being put forward for Mitchell Shire Council, Murrumbidgee Shire Council, Mansfield Shire Council and Strathbogie Shire Council to work together moving forward. Why those councils are selected is because each of those councils were affected by the recent bushfires to some degree, some more than others in relation to the area of land or the infrastructure that was lost, livestock squad lost, etc., but also the impacts of roads being closed and the tourism and economic resulting outcomes of those. It's fabulous that rural councils are not restricted in their thinking by a line on a map, because a line on a map means nothing. We might live in one particular part of our shire, but we go and shop in a particular part of a neighbouring shire. Our children might go to school in a neighbouring shire. We are connected because of the nature of us being rural. The advantages of this, and first of all, I'd like to thank and acknowledge the innovation in relation to this Memorandum of Understanding, congratulate the 4 CEOs for getting their heads together and pulling this together with the staff that supported them, because it is innovative, it is different. It hasn't been done before, to my knowledge. I know it has been done in the planning arena, because I know of councils that were involved with that, but not necessarily in a recovery and response scenario. So thank you for that. What the Memorandum of Understanding enables us to do, it's going to work together to promote consistent and coordinated and community-centred approaches to relief and recovery. It's going to support a coherent and equitable experience for communities regardless of municipal boundaries. We're going to share intelligence, data and insights to inform planning and decision-making. We're going to collaborate on resourcing and capability and workforce support where appropriate. We're going to strengthen collective advocacy to state, Commonwealth governments for shared priorities. Now, combined voices and combined evidence are much stronger than individuals having to sort of compete against their neighbours. It just makes sense. We've had major events, the floods, the fires, and they don't respect the municipal boundaries. We're all affected by these significant events, and to have a joint voice and to fight for our communities in this way, I think is absolutely fabulous. I'd just like to sign off by saying we've already touched on and acknowledged the support that we got from our neighbours, primarily Mitchell and Murrindindi, because they border us in relation to the significant event, and I don't know how we would have done it without them. For the information of the community, the fire started in our shire, therefore a lot of responsibility fell into our lap. Such as setting up that evacuation centre, the fact that Mitchell were open to us using their facilities, using their staff, using their experience was a tremendous leg up. We've learned a lot by it. Councillors, community and staff have gained a lot of insight and experience from this, and that will continue by the sharing of this memorandum of understanding. So I can't support it strongly enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen. Councillor Holloway, seconder, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'll speak now, thank you. This MOU may or may not unlock economies of scale, efficiencies, and better ways to advocate for monies. Where it is vitally important is as a signal to state and federal decision makers, as well as to the community, that we are in this together. It is a lot more difficult for any decision makers to refuse 4 councils acting together in concert than it is to refuse 1 council acting without regards to their peers. So I am, like my colleague, 100% in support of this. We need to signal to everyone involved that we are hanging together in this and that we are advocating for each other as much as for ourselves.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. See other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Nelson?
If I put this in the context of community, knowing, supporting and working with your neighbours is how we live, work and defend our properties. Partnerships with neighbouring councils should be a way of business. Communities don't observe boundaries. So in the context of working relationships, why should councils? I would go further and say that as a strategic relationship that rural councils should add partnerships with cash positive urban councils, and that sharing across urban and regional is the key to bringing more money out into regional areas. Urban dwellers need somewhere to play and regional areas is where they play. So why not take on some of the responsibility to maintain the facilities? And strategic relationships is how we, I think, have to go in the future. So bring on more.
Thanks, Councillor Nelson. Any other councillor wish to speak to it? No, in that case, I'll put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. You councillors are now moving to item 11.4.3 on page 63. ALGA Financial Sustainability Inquiry Submission. The purpose of this report is for Council to note the submission to the National Inquiry into Local Government Funding and Fiscal Sustainability. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? No. We have a recommendation. Could I have a
Motion? Sure.
motion, please? Could you state what your motion is?
No problem. I move that the recommendation on page 69 become the motion as printed in page 63. Oh, I've got 69. 63.
63.
63 then.
Page 63.
Sorry.
Thank you. Councillors, can I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Carlson. Is the motion opposed? Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Nelson? No wish to speak to the motion? Any other councillor wish? Councillor Carlson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, I mean, let's face it, what we're talking about here is something that's common to all councils in Australia. It's probably been an annual request for as long as I can remember. I don't know. I haven't kept up with things, but the bottom line is that we are not the only smallish council in Australia undergoing financial stress. It's a pretty common affliction. And the more pressure and the more consistency, transparent support for redress in this area is got to be welcomed. I've got no idea in terms of what impact this has. But the fact of the matter is it has to be kept in makers because ultimately the solution to our problems are not completely in our hands. So we have to keep pushing any way we can.
Thank you, Councillor Carson. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Okay, Councillor Briggs.
Yeah, just briefly, I think, so this is obviously a letter to the inquiry by Australian Local Government Association and representing all councils across Australia as alluded to by Councillor Carlson. And one of the items that the submission made is this, the really low level of untied funding that's provided to councils across Australia, and that becomes quite challenging and goes, I think, back to the administrative recommendation in the Monitor's report around, anytime we do funding, and if it is tied funding and the sort of administrative burden that then rests on council to be able to meet those requirements in that funding and the sort of limitations with which we can expend money within their guidelines. And so that real call for untied funding, along with the that annual and probably more than annual call for the rectification of those financial assistance grants to be returned to their 1% portion of the Commonwealth tax revenue, which was what it was at before it was reduced. I think I don't remember the exact year, but it was around 2015, I believe. It was reduced down to about 0.5% of the Commonwealth tax revenue, and just the impact that that's had on the industry right across Australia, I think, is something we're seeing, which is impacting councils regionally, rurally, and also in our urban areas. We're seeing that is a huge impact on councils, and so just really thank the officers for being able to make this submission in light of everything else that was going on at the time. It's a really comprehensive and concise submission that hopefully gets us a good result.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. I will now put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Councillors, we now move to page 69. Item 11.4.4, Alga priorities and motions for the General Assembly, 23 to 25, 23rd to 25th June 2026. The purpose of this report is for Council to endorse the motions to be submitted to the Australian Local Government Association, ALGA, National General Assembly of Local Government, to be held in Canberra in June 2026. Do we have any questions of clarification? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can you please state your motion?
Can I have another go? Given that I was on the wrong page before, so I want to apologise to Amanda and Michelle for being unprepared to speak to that motion. I was still looking for a different page, so I apologise.
Councillor Halsall,
So
you have a motion.
we're on 11.4.4. Okay, here we go. Page 69, here we go. So I would like the recommendation on page 69 to become the motion, please.
Yeah, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Binks. Any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Halsall, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes. This is an incredibly important motion. It's a submission to ALGA. It has 5, let me just check there haven't been any changes. There's still 5 motions, and they are all fundamental and very important. The first one calls for increasing financial assistance, which is 1% of the Commonwealth tax revenue. That won't solve all our problems, but it would certainly double our resources. Motion 2, a national fund and agency for disaster response. We are coming off the back of a snowballing effect of disaster experience and the depletion of any operating or surplus because we're going backwards every time we have a new disaster. Motion 3 is federal funding for disaster resilience. Motion 4 is reliable power supply and infrastructure, and our running commentary on every notice board certainly speaks to our power insecurity and the regular loss of power. And motion 5 is equitable digital and telecommunications infrastructure. All we want to do is be able to call our loved ones and each other in an emergency, and it is very difficult to do that with the power off. So let's just hope we can get some equity of service with our urban counterparts. Hopefully it gets up.
Thank you, councillor Hassel. Councillor Binks, can you speak to the motion or is that your right?
Thank you, Mayor Jeffrey. No, that's fine. I'll just talk to it now. I think echoing councillor Halsell's comments, it's a really important motion for them to be presented to Elga and hopefully accepted by them for the National General Assembly. And I'm sure that these motions will be supported by many of our colleagues right across Australia. I think there's a real need for all of them to be addressed, but in particular, I think that increase to the financial assistance grants, I mean, all of them, they're all really important.
Yeah, they're all really important.
They're all really important. And we just I think, well, motion 2, I'm particularly, I guess, passionate about that there really needs to be a different way of doing and managing and responding to natural disasters in this country. We're not the only council that is impacted, but often natural disasters who impact regional and rural communities, and just the impact on our organisation, the resourcing, the staff. It's massive, and we can't continue to roll in this sort of rolling, bouncing from one response to another. It's just not sustainable, and I think we would see a significant impact on the local government landscape if something is not done to address that at a national level.
Thank you, councillor Binks. Any other councillors wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Carl.
Yeah, briefly, Mr. Mayor, thank you. It's they're all important. A couple of them are a bit more important than others in terms of their impact on us. But at the end of the day, we are in the hands of higher authority. An interesting thing, piece of useless information on developments. 1998 and that close to getting a percentage of the GST. Just like that. But we came close. But I don't think the industry can really go much more without having sort of breakthrough like that. I don't know what the size of the Australian economy is compared to what our government would have been beneficiary of that arrangement. And that's the sort of thing we're going to have to try and arrange one day. We came close once, we might come close again.
Yes, councillor Carlson. Anyone else wish to speak to this? In that case, I'll put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Moving now to page 75 of our agendas, item 11.4.5, prevention and management of sexual harassment policy. The purpose of this report is to adopt the prevention and management of sexual harassment policy. Are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? No. Is there a motion? Please state what your motion is. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. My motion is as per the recommendation on page 75, the council adopt the prevention and management of sexual harassment policy, and secondly, make the policy publicly available through the council website.
Thank you, councillor Stevens. Can I have a second? Councillor Holloway. Is the motion opposed? Councillor Stevens, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just very quickly to say this is a legislative requirement, but even putting that aside, people are entitled to be safe in their working environment. So it's just making sense. So all for it.
Thank you. Councillor Holloway, do you wish to speak to the motion?
It's an important policy. It's a long-standing policy. This motion endorses the update of it, which has some very sensible refreshes to procedures and reporting. So I commend it.
Thank you, councillor Holloway. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? No, in that case, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Moving now to page 91 of our agenda, item 11.4.6, Audit and Risk Committee Annual Performance Report. The purpose of this report is for council to receive and note the Audit and Risk Committee Annual Performance Report for the period 1st of January 2025 to 1st of December 2025. Are there any questions and clarification before we proceed? Is there a motion? Please state what your motion is. Councillor Holloway.
Mr. Mayor, I move the recommendation on the papers become.
Yeah, can I have a second? Councillor Halsall. Is there any opposition? Councillor Holloway, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I will. I sit on this committee and I can give firsthand assurance that this report is both comprehensive and accurate in its description of the performance of the committee of this calendar year. And further, if any person suffers from insomnia, please read it in depth. No disrespect to the writers.
Guaranteed it works.
Sleep at night.
Guaranteed it works.
Councillor Holloway, councillor Halsall, with the motion. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Being the case, I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Moving now to page 111, item 11.4.7. S11A and S11B, instruments of appointment and authorisation. The purpose of this report is to update changes to the S11A instrument of appointment and authorisation, Planning and Environment Act 1987, and the S11B instrument of appointment and authorisation, Environment Protection Act 2017. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification? Is there a motion? And can you please state what your motion is, councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the motion recommendation on page 111 in points 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. The motion.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Stevens? Any opposition to the motion? Councillor Carlson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just to say that this is quite normal housekeeping from time to time. These resolutions are required for us to be complying with our statutory obligations.
You, councillor Stevens, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Okay, so put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Moving now to page 119, item 11.4.8, S6 instrument delegation of members of staff. The purpose of this report is to update changes to the S6 instrument of delegation to members of staff due to organisation and legislative changes. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification before we proceed? No. Is there a motion? And can you please state what your motion is? Councillor Carlson.
As before, Mr. Mayor, page 119, points 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Stevens. Any opposition? You, councillor Carlson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Same as my previous comments in the previous resolution.
Thank you, councillor Stevens.
Yeah, this is just because of change of positions, changes of legislation. You know, you have to keep things up to date. It's operational. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak to this motion? That being the case, put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Moving now to item 11.4.9 on page 219. Record of informal meeting of councillors December 2025 and January 2026. The purpose of this report is for council to note the record of informal meetings of councillors from 1st of December 2025 to the 31st of January 2026. Council, is there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Is there a motion, and can you please state what your motion is? Councillor Howson.
I move that the recommendation as printed on page 209.
Is there a second to that motion? Councillor Stevens. Is there any opposition? Councillor Howson, do you wish to speak to this motion?
This is a record of meetings between the 1st of December and the 31st of January. Unfortunately, we were back early for with the bushfires. So what should be a feeling of freshness and rejuvenation is one of, near exhaustion, let's face it. So yes, this is an accurate record of our informal meetings.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens, would you like?
No, thanks. As per the report.
Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Okay, so I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried. Moving now to page 225, item 11.5.1, advocacy update. The purpose of this report is to update the community on ministerial visits and advocacy engagements resulting from the Longwood Berries Lane fire. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Is there a motion, and can you please state what your motion is? Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I am page 225. I move the recommendation that council note the ministerial visits and advocacy resulting from the Longwood Lane fire in January 2026.
Can I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Carlson. Is there any opposition?
What have we done wrong?
No. Got a clarification, I think.
Councillor Stevens.
Is it a point of clarification that some meetings may not have been included in this document that are in the mirror report?
Right.
So,
Can I move an amendment?
We don't need an amendment at this stage, do
Oh, yeah. Amend. You're going to move at the second. Yes, you can.
You would like to move an amendment?
Yeah.
Councillor Carlson.
That the recommendation on page 25 be the motion with additional reference to the Mayor's report for the additional meetings and ministerial visits that took place. That should fulfil the omissions in this report.
Thank you, Councillor Howson. I have a seconder for the amendment. Councillor Binks. Any opposition? No. Councillor Howson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, we have had a catastrophic bushfire, and it has given me a window into politics, which, has been an incredible opportunity. Personally, I've sat and talked and strolled down the street with Jacqueline Symes, Vicky Ward, Nick Stakos, Christy McBain, Helen Hayes and Sam Perrell. There's a couple of extras on there, but it has been an incredible opportunity to experience how, the state and federal levels of politics work. And, if there's a silver lining, I'm certainly full of gratitude for the opportunity to sit around the table and and listen and also make some demands, which I can say was done fairly strongly.
Councillor Halsall, Councillor Binks is a seconder for this amended motion. Would you like to speak to it?
Just to say that we have had this, out of tragedy comes opportunity, and I guess that opportunity is to have the attention of so many ministers to the council and the community, and I think to yourself and the councillors who have attended those. It's been a shared effort between those and obviously the CEO and other relevant staff members to ensure that we're representing our community to the best of our ability in ensuring that what these ministers at both the state and federal level, as well as other public servants, at the high level public servants that I guess allocate and make the rules around how funding is allocated and those kind of things are really responsive about what's happening on the ground and how they can do that to ensure we get the best outcome for our community.
You, Councillor Binks. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Stevens.
Really quickly, advocacy
Speaking to the amendment, by the way.
The amended motion.
being the additional meetings, being the additional meetings.
Is it just about the amendment?
Just about the amendment.
Becoming then the motion, should council resolve to do that?
Oh, we just bit.
Okay, yes. I can.
Setting the additional meetings.
So we'll now put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? The amendment is carried. Now the amendment becomes the motion. And doesn't know, is it better? Councillor House.
Pretty sure it fell back to class. So it must fall back.
Close. We'll go to councillor. That's a the amendment.
Now, the original mover of the motion was Councillor Carlson.
Hey. Oh, you.
They moved the amendment.
Councillor Carson's signature.
Councillor Carlson, would you like to speak?
Only briefly in the sense that it's just thought of the ministerial visits to the community was a litany of people trooping through the place. Most of them I met, but not all of them, because they turn up on about 3 minutes' notice. So that's just the way about that. But I think the point that I'd like to make is that it's a very diverse group of people from all sorts of experiences and responsibilities, government, opposition, federal, state, whatever. And I think in the original motion it says advocacy is the key. That's the key word. That the consistent message has been delivered to these people 24/7, 7 days a week. We never sleep. Really, that's the value of having so many face-to-face contacts, personal contacts. And it'll go on for some time yet.
Thank you. Is there any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. I agree 100% with the comments of the previous speaker. Advocacy, advocacy, advocacy. It's a catastrophic event that has put us in this position, but we are going to make the most of it. And it's good that some of these ministers in particular may have heard of Strathbogie Council before for all the wrong reasons. And on this occasion, they're hearing from us for different circumstances. And it's really good that they get to know us and we get to know them, because we are a new mob. So we're starting afresh. The diversity, I think, is important. We've sort of put forward a theme of our asks, but we've also been very targeted to the right ministers for the right asks. We've provided a bit more sort of parochial background so that if other ministers are speaking to something that we've raised with them, they can pull it all together. So I think the advocacy has gone really well. So congratulations to our media officer, Sharon, for pulling together a lot of this stuff and for the delivery of it at the level that the Mayor and the CEO have done. And also thank you to every councillor who has made the effort to attend these meetings and other staff, because it is important we show up. It is important for them to see our faces and to hear our views, because we are the voice of the community and we will continue to be that. So, yep, let's keep doing it.
Any other councillor wish to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, the consistency of the message is carried in the advocacy document that was developed very early in Rochelle's tenure, and I would like to pay my respect and attribute that policy document, that advocacy document to Rochelle, because I believe it was her that introduced it and created that consistency, and it may have been developed in with the assistance of the exec, but certainly the fact that we had that policy document very early and that it is creating a very uniform and consistent message across every single person that comes to our chamber is in large respect of Rochelle's work. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? In that case, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Moving on now to page 228, item 11.5.2. Quarterly report, customer service. The purpose of this report is for council to note the quarterly customer service report for the period 1st November 2025 to 31st of January 2026. Is there any questions of clarification? So is there a motion? The motion is Councillor Holloway.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the recommendation as printed on page 228 of our papers become the motion.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Halsall. Any opposition to the motion? Councillor Holloway, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I do. This is a quite comprehensive quarterly report showing times and service levels within our customer service charter framework. As expected, for the last quarter, we experienced a catastrophic emergency. Some of these times are showing signs of slippage. However, this report is great because we are in the mode of documenting this and using it as a tool for future improvement. When I campaigned for the role of councillor, this was one of my platforms on the campaign trail, was documenting our customer service and putting it into a framework of total quality management, which is precisely what this report does. It's a report that shows we are under stress, but it's a report that shows we're in the right direction.
Councillor Holloway. Councillor Halsall, you wish to speak the motion or is that wrong?
Yes, on first look, this report looks like we are slipping in terms of abandoned call time, queue time. However, there is a new line item there for the type of calls, which is bushfire for January 26 calls answered. There's 300 additional calls that have been through. There's also an increase in the complexity of the queries that are coming through. So if you've just experienced bushfire and you're in your local council for some information, I think it's fair and reasonable that a operator spend some time with you to help direct and to sort through some of the issues that you're dealing with. So the fact that there is a bank and longer wait times and longer duration for me doesn't indicate poor service, but more a response to the environment and the needs of the community. So unfortunately for Strathbogie Shire, we're limited in our resources to be able to have a surge workforce and put additional into play when this happens. It would have been great to be able to increase the call centre workforce and respond, but unfortunately that's not always possible. The other great thing, if I just expand on what Clark said, the other great thing about this report and the way it is managed, it allows us to understand what type of customer service interactions we have, and then in the future make some aspirations about how we want to interact and what our goals are. So when you start to track your performance, it enables some goal setting and then some direction of where you want the service to go. And by no means do I want the service to go wholly and solely online, but understanding how you support your community base is very important. I would like to provide some feedback to the report writer in that some of the graphics in the report are very, very difficult to read. And when you're on the north side of 50, even with your glasses, it's still pretty challenging. So if that could be taken into consideration for the next meeting, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Halsall. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. In case, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Moving now to page 235, item 12, notices of motion. Notice of motion has been received from councillors Clark Holloway and Vicky Halsall. In accordance with section 41 of the governance rules, the Chief Executive Officer has accepted the motion, deeming it valid. The motion calls for officers to prepare an internal councillor briefing relating to council's emergency management policy framework. Item 12.2 provides an officer report on the policy, financial and resourcing implications of the notice of motion to assist councillors in decision making. Councillors, can I please have a mover for item 12.1? Councillor Holloway.
You, Mr. Mayor. The motion is printed on page 235 of our papers, but given my view of its gravity, I'd like to read it out. The motion is that council requests council officers prepare an internal briefing to council outlining council's emergency management policy framework, including but not limited to the Municipal Emergency Management Plan, MEMP, which provides the overarching structure for emergency prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery within Strathbogie Shire. That the briefing includes 1, a review of how existing emergency management policy framework was implemented during the Longwood and Berries Lane fire. 2, an outline of Strathbogie Shire's operational response to these incidents, including coordination with emergency service, activation processes, and emergency response arrangements. 3, recommendations for strengthening council's internal readiness, cross-agency cooperation, and community-facing emergency preparedness measures with reference to local emergency action plans and community resilience initiatives already developed within the Shire. 4, Strathbogie Shire's operational response to potential future small-scale and/or developing emergencies where emergency management is still being coordinated by local responders. And 5, a summary of the meeting with emergency services as part of the Municipal Fire Prevention Subcommittee, including an authorized representative from Fire Rescue Victoria.
Thank you, councillor Holloway. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Halsall. Is there any opposition to the motion? Councillor Stevens. Councillor Banks. Councillor Holloway, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you. There will be a time for comprehensive post-incident reviews of the Longwood and Berries Lane fire, covering all responding agencies that are conducted over months or years and result in recommendations for improvement to policy and procedure that may significantly alter responses. This notice of motion is not about that, and in no way an attempt to preempt or shortcut that. It is far more tactical in nature. What drives this notice of motion is the understanding that we are still in the thick of bushfire season this year, months yet to go, We are still in what is turning into the worst drought of the 21st century. Our environment is still a literal tinderbox of dry fuel waiting for one careless cigarette butt or unattended campfire to go up. And now we have the added burden of a significant swathe of burned infrastructure and environment. Though the Shire's support of operational responders in the Longwood and Berries Lane fire seem to have been executed fairly well, very well even, there are two crucial things that in my view necessitate an urgent review at this stage. One is that the response to the Longwood and Berries Lane fire in and of itself may have taken its toll on the Shire's equipment and human resources, such that they are not as ready for the next emergency. We need visibility of and possible degradations to response for the next few months. The other is much more subtle, but in my view, far more important. And that is that in a very real sense, the Shire had the luxury of this being an emergency where a fully fledged structure was put into place on the responders side before the Shire was called upon to provide support. The next emergency, by contrast, may be where a local CFA person acting as on-scene incident controller calls for Shire assistance in the first few minutes from discovery. Are we as an organization ready for that? I would hope so. Hope, however, is not enough, and this briefing will get to the bottom of that. This eventuality is specifically called for in point 4 of the notice of motion, our readiness for future small-scale and/or developing emergencies. We really need to know this. Council needs a briefing on the above to ensure we are across where operational staff are at until we thankfully see out this horrific bushfire season. Of course, it also goes without saying that the community needs confidence that we are doing something to ensure our tactical readiness as well, which this notice of motion does by virtue of being discussed. Officers have noted that the notice of motion comes at very little financial cost to the organization, and as such, from a cost-benefit analysis, is a no-brainer. Insight into our tactical readiness at very little cost is something well worth doing. There's also a question about any signal this notice of motion may send to other agencies and state or federal governments. Will they think we are acting in undue haste or engaging in knee-jerk reactions? I would not think so. There's nothing in the remit and text of the notice of motion that should go into that potential minefield. But to be perfectly and completely honest, even if these questions are raised, that is not my concern. My duty as a councillor is to advocate vigorously for my community above all else, save ethics and law. If this causes any mixed signals, that's a price worth paying to ensure we as an organization are prepared for any future emergencies for the remainder of this bushfire season, and our community has confidence in that. Nothing else is as remotely important. I most strongly urge my colleagues to vote in favour of this notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Councillor Halsall as a seconder. Would you like to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
I'm good. Clark has been preparing and talking about his desire for a notice of motion for a number of weeks. Would more be voiced, Mark? And I believed it to be the result of a gap identified in the incident response process. A critical time at the beginning of a crisis, at a time where the on-site respondent is the incident controller. Actions at this time have the greatest impact on the trajectory of the incident. Using Longwood Berries Lane fire, it starts on the freeway. Some sparks set the road reserve alight in multiple places. Immediate responders on the freeway transporting water managed to put out some of the flames. These flames never get out of the roadside reserve, no bushfire. Sparks further along the road ignite the road reserve outside the reach of the roadside responders, and they call O. The fire heads out into the paddock. The first responders, CFA, attend, and it's my understanding that as an on-site responder, incident control falls within their responsibility. If the first responder has the capacity to direct assistance, request assets, there is a real opportunity to prevent a grass fire getting to catastrophic bushfire. As a community, we ought to take responsibility to defend and mitigate in the early stages as best we can. Does council have a role? Should council have a role? Is there connections that could be facilitated that increases the number of grass fires that can be stopped at grass fire? Logical thinking says council should be part of the conversation. Council should support the incident controller, and any efforts that halt the fire as a grass fire be supported. This notice of motion is an open conversation to explore the gaps, thrash out the opportunities, the limitations, the risks, and the responsible actions, connections that facilitate early mitigation. If opening this line of engagement builds trust and faith with immediate responders, if it explores the gap, if it results in agreements, access, or facilitates actions that mitigate one grass fire and prevent one bushfire, saves one house, one property, one life, it's a conversation worth having. Let's do the work to close the gap. Why wait for the state to formalise before we can act? But at the very least, we need to have the conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Halsall. One of the councillors who oppose the motion wish to speak. Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, sure. Thank you to councillor Holloway for the notice of motion, but I am speaking against the notice of motion, not the intent per se, because the intent is basically to improve things. I'm certainly not going to speak against that. But what I am speaking to are a number of aspects sitting around this. I think the point I'd like to make is earlier this evening we dealt with an item, it was item 11, it was actually the condolence item, but within that recommendation, point 5, spoke to request a report from officers within 12 months that reviews council's response and recovery to the Longwood Berries Lane fire event, capturing lessons to learn to improve future events. Maybe I read that wrongly, but you get the gist of it. We've already dealt with this. We've already asked for a report to deal with this event and to capture lessons learned and to improve future events upon future events. There's a lot more information that's required to meet that responsibility, and there's a lot more information required in addition to what's in this NOM to meet that responsibility. I don't think we should be duplicating. I think we've covered off on what we're trying to achieve. There are 2 inquiries that we're going to have an opportunity to put into, 2 submissions we can make. One is in relation to the CFA specifically, and one is in relation to the state and this event. So we are going to have the opportunity to identify the gaps and to speak to those gaps if it comes within our remit and purpose to do so. Keeping in mind there are going to be a lot of other submissions into that as well that will bring in evidence and information that we don't have and we won't get. So for completeness, I believe it is appropriate to wait to get responses and be better informed as we move forward. So I would put this off. I take the point about we're still in bushfire mode, which we potentially are. But we have been in that for many, many years and will continue to be, and we will manage it to the best of our ability. The experience that we've just had is one out of the box. It's not the norm. So we need to go back to the fact that we have fires starting all the time, all over the place. And the vast majority of them are very well dealt with the existing system and the existing resources. Most of the fires are put out by the local CFAs or the farmers or a combined effort of both, and all the slip-on units that attend these things. And council do not even get involved in them, nor do they need to. Now, there may be the odd exception to the rule there, where for whatever reason they do need our assistance. It is in the existing procedures already that they can ask for it. And if we're in a position to assist with it, we will assist with it. We have a document, the Municipal Emergency Management Plan. It's a 89-page document. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but partnership strategies and plans on page 25 of that document. Government authorities and agencies, along with council, the community, Individuals, emergency services have a key role in implementing strategies and plans which reduce the risk associated with emergency events. Strathbogie Shire Council has worked closely with Mansfield and Murrumbidgee councils, including arranging joint training for MIMOs, MRMs, etc., and is an active participant in the Hume Municipal Emergency Management Enhancement Group to keep abreast and contribute to improvements in emergency management arrangements. The council, in partnership with the CFA, has also initiated regular short, maximum 30 minutes weekly meetings online. They're team meetings that are attended by the 3 CFA group officers, the CFA catchment officer and the council's emergency management officer. These meetings assist in raising and resolving issues and the tracking of activities in between more formal municipal fire planning subcommittees. Representation on these acronyms, the Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committee. You've got the chair, you've got police, you've got Victoria State Emergency, you've got Country Fire Authority, you've got Department of Families and Fairness, you've got Ambulance, Red Cross. From council, we've got Municipal Recovery Manager, we've got Municipal Emergency Manager Officer, we've got the Strathbogie Shire Council Management Manager Officer, other departments, Department of Land, Water, Agriculture, Emergency Recovery, blah, 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 and on it goes. So there is a whole document that addresses these situations. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think maybe some of us, this is the first time we've been exposed to an incident of this magnitude, and we're a little bit concerned about the way it works, justifiably, even those that have been exposed beforehand. We can always do better. We can always learn from these things, and the processes are in place for that to occur. As a matter of procedure, we will be reviewing our documents. The state will be reviewing, the CFA will be reviewing. There's going to be a lot of reviewing going on. We need all of that information before we can really get a sense of direction. So that's the reason why I'm voting against this, not what's the intent of it, but the fact that this is too early, it's too incomplete. There are mechanisms in place that are going to put us in a better position to make these decisions. And I'd just like to touch very quickly before I close on a couple of comments very quickly. Okay, I'll do it quick. Okay, there's a lot of unknowns here. The cost, the document speaks to minimal cost and staff cost, but the ongoing cost, the cost of our equipment, the insurances, our staff, the health and wellbeing. Previous speaker spoke about advocating for the community. Absolutely. But we also have to advocate for the safety and wellbeing of our staff and the economic impacts and costs to the organisation that this may lead to. I just think it's too early. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Would any councillor like to speak in favour of the motion? Councillor Banks, you've indicated opposition to the motion. Would you like to speak?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mayor Jeffrey. Echo Councillor Stevens' comments in that I appreciate and understand the intent of the notice of motion put up by Councillor Holloway and seconded by Councillor Halsall. Further to Councillor Stevens' concerns around this notice of motion, my concerns also rest with the fact that we have emergency management legislation, an act, and there's certain things that we are required to do and different agencies are required to do under that act. And I think part of that forms these processes that will come in terms of the review process. Both the mover and the seconder spoke to this, and it's in the notice of motion. I know that they're asking for a report so we can understand further, and I think this is a valid thing to happen down the track, but I think that the operational response to potential future small scale and or developing emergencies where emergency management is still being coordinated by local responders, and both the mover and the seconder spoke to the desire for to have some involvement in that. I would, that for me is a real bit of I'm concerned about that. I have spoken to emergency management officers in other shires of a similar size of ours to get a gauge of how do you do it, and spoken to some people in the industry to understand how they do it. I was told of an example where a captain of a local brigade put a request to the municipal emergency management officer for equipment, and that was provided, and it left the council with a $40,000 deficit because captains do not have financial delegations. And so just understanding the implications of were we to go down that path, what would that mean for us as an organisation financially, but also as Councillor Stevens mentioned in closing of her debate around the implications on our insurance, on our staff, and on our capacity to continue to deliver what it is that we're required to deliver under other legislation. So I'm just cautious around those areas, but also the timing. And I note that in the officer report in response to this, that the resourcing implications of just providing this internal briefing, which whilst that might not have a large financial impact initially on the organisation, it has been identified that it would require a reallocation of our officer time to be able to prepare and present this report to the councillor group, and that would take the officers away from the work that they're doing to help our community and our organisation recover from the bushfire that we've just experienced. So for me, it's around, again, this timing and understanding the complexity of emergency management. I think the inquiries and those investigations that will happen as a result of this fire and fires right across Victoria that we've seen this summer will inform a great deal of how different organisations do this. We have to remember that we are not a lead agency in emergencies. We are a partner of other agencies, be that the SES, police, or the Country Fire Authority or Municipal Fire Authority if you're in an urban setting, so that understanding what is our role in it and where do we play a role and how do we do that. I think that's just a bigger conversation, and I'm just conscious of the already enormous workload that is on our staff. They are still doing their substantive roles whilst also managing a recovery effort, and just being really aware of that and just not wanting to overburden our staff.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Carl,
Sorry, say it again. What were you asking for?
would you like to speak to the motion?
To the motion.
Yes.
I've always believed that you can pay the greatest respect to somebody is to tell them what you really think, good, bad, or indifferent. I've listened very carefully to all of this and have discussed it. There's been lots of discussions over the last week over this, backwards and forwards. And I've got to say, I quite understand the movement of seconders' motivations and rationale. But I have to make the statement that, in my view, too emotionally involved in this. It sounds like a criticism. It's not. It's an observation. We have to deal with reality. Good ones and bad ones. No matter how difficult it is. And the reality is, no matter what we decide tonight, there is not going to be a change in the operational procedure during this fire season. Status quo will remain, investigations will occur, modifications may be made, changes may be made, not in the fire season. So whatever we've got in place now will stay. That's my understanding. We've all received feedback about things that have worked. One I can think of as the successful prevention of fire crossing along the Mansfield Road, and therefore mitigating the risks of this town. And things that didn't work: communication breakdown, command and control, deployment of assets. I've tried to support this motion for the intent is clear and it's justified. However, there's a time and a place to deal with this issue, and this is neither at this moment. We have options to address these issues, as both the previous Councillor Binks and Councillor Stevens have outlined. Lastly, staff are working flat out on this issue, the whole issue of the fires, despite it being absolutely justified as a major piece of work, and the staff have its focus on identified challenges now. And I think this is a bridge too far at this time. So in conclusion, ultimately, my belief if this motion is passed represents bad governance on the part of the Shire on balance. Therefore, I'll be opposing it.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. I too would like to speak to this motion. Echo a lot of the commentary that has been mentioned tonight. The intent of this motion, absolutely, I agree with. I've been a member of the CFA around 30 years. I understand the complexities of getting the right resources to the right spot at the right time when you're in the CFA. And I think in this particular incident, that fell well short of expectations in many areas. However, the timing of this, and as Councillor Carlson has pointed out, the motion doesn't seek to resolve the issue within this fire season. And that, therefore, for me, means that we would be placing an unnecessary burden on the organisation that is already well and truly stretched beyond its means, attending to the issues that we have at hand with the natural disaster that we're responding to. Longer term, it's absolutely critical that this organisation works together with the other response agencies and the state government in understanding the post-incident review effectively and understanding exactly where this organisation fits in both small and larger responses. But therefore, at this point in time, I also won't support this motion. Councillor Holloway, as the mover of this motion, would you like to exercise your right of reply?
I would. I disagree with my colleague, Councillor Carlson, that I'm overly emotionally invested in this. I'm not emotionally invested in it. I'm advocating for my community, which I think is the most important duty of a councillor. To wait 12 months to respond to a operational change that has already been implemented, which I'll get to me is sitting on our hands and the height of foolishness. The operational change that has been implemented that has nothing to do with this notice of motion is, as of now, every single CFA truck has a laminated sticky with the Shire's MIMO phone number on it. As far as I can judge by the intent of the CFA, they will seek to engage with the Shire for resources in the first instance, rather than after large-scale structures have been
Thanks, everyone, and welcome back. Could I have a motion to resume standing orders, please? Councillor Stevens. And Councillor Carlton. Everyone's in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you and welcome back at 6:56 p.m. This is a recap. We were discussing item 12, notice of the motion. All councillors have spoken for and against the motion, and it was with Councillor Holloway for his right of reply. Councillor Holloway.
Okay, so I raised this notice of motion, not through emotion, not through a knee-jerk reaction, but to advocate for the community. I do not believe it is prudent to sit on our hands for 12 months until more comprehensive reviews are in place. And the reason I do not believe it is prudent to do so is there has been an operational change that has nothing to do with this notice of motion, whereby all CFA trucks now have the Shire's NEMO number laminated and printed on a sticky within that truck. So we can expect that in future, it is more likely we will get requests for assistance more quickly in any developing emergency than we have in the past. The number is there. I understand that this is a burden for staff, but it does not need to be a war and peace report. It just needs to be a report that ensures that for future emergency, we will be prepared, given that conditions changed, given that we are still in bushfire season. The report does not come until May, but it is my hope that the act of preparing this report is getting that thought process within the Shire officers preparing it, that there will be most likely more early requests for assistance than we have expected and than we have had in the past, because now every CFA truck has the Shire MEMO number to it. So I don't understand the opposition to it, given that there's very little financial cost, given that it is not asking for war and peace, does not need to be a burden to staff. It just needs to be a realization that we are still in bushfire season, we are still in danger, and we will not have the luxury, potentially in future emergencies, like we did in the Longwood and Berries Lane fire, where a state hierarchy is established before we get calls for assistance. In terms of insurance and all that sort of concern, this does nothing to that. These Shire assets will be used according to policy and according to law. It has nothing to do with this notice of motion. It is just the timing we can expect requests, and accepting that that may have changed, and accepting waiting 12 months for this is sitting on our hands. It is foolish to wait 12 months to accept this changed reality.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Given all councillors have now spoken to this motion, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? Motion is just.
May I request a division? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Holloway. That's requested division. I'll put the motion back to a vote. All those in favour? Councillor Holloway, Councillor Halsall, all those against? Councillor Carlson, Councillor Stevens, Councillor Jeffrey, and Councillor Binks. Thank you very much for all your debate. Moving now to item 13. Notices of rescission, there are nil. On page 238. Item 14, confidential business. There's nil. Item 15, urgent business. There's nil. Item 16, next meeting. Next meeting of the Strathbogie Shire Council will be held on the 17th of March 2026, commencing at 4 p.m. at the Roa Community Conference Centre. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your participation. There being no further business, the meeting is closed at 7:02 p.m.